Welcome to the Jordan Lang Podcast. This is a space where we will have conversations on all of the things like business, wellness, motherhood, social activism, and lots more. Come prepared with an openness to learn, grow, and expand yourself just a little bit further with each topic we discuss. Thank you for joining us today. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 6 of the Jordan Lang Podcast. We are continuing season 1's theme of emotional and mental wellness with today's episode, which is a conversation on conscious relationships with Cassandra Solano. Cassandra is a Chicanx licensed clinical social worker in California and a conscious relationship coach. She has been counseling since 2006 in various settings, from drug treatment to running a large mental health program serving homeless and formerly incarcerated populations. She has been in private practice for over a year, serving women and couples online all over the world to identify how their childhood trauma is impacting their adult relationships to get clarity and the love they want. Cassandra is a sober mom of 3 plus 1 bonus kid and is a survivor of childhood emotional abuse, domestic violence, and is remarried after struggling for a decade in her first toxic marriage. She uses a mind, body, spirit approach in helping her clients and enjoys integrating psychology, neuroscience, and spirituality to help clients transform their lives. Let's get started with our conversation on conscious relationships. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Jordan Lang Podcast. Super excited for this conversation today with Cassandra. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, what you like to do outside of work, and a little bit about what you do for work.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. So my name is Cassandra Solano. Pronouns are she, they. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of California and a conscious relationship coach. So I work with folks all over the world to help them figure out why are they single and stuck, not being able to find a relationship, or maybe they're in a long-term relationship and they have been struggling. They're not sure if it's the right one for them, if they should stay or go. And we kind of get down to some root issues, as well as teaching communication skills to help them get the love they want. I'm also a mom of 3, 3 of my own, 3 under 11, and then I have a bonus kid who's also 11. I'm remarried to the handsomest person in the world, or at least I think so. And we live here in North Orange County in Southern California. So I always tell people I live between Disneyland and the beach, but it's not the fancy, house on the cliff. It's just the suburbs here. And when I am not working, I love watching Netflix with my husband. His love language is quality time. So even though I like to get up and do things, he loves just sitting and being together. I love hiking. We have some hills here in the area that I love hiking and taking our dog for a walk on. And I'm really into spirituality and woo-woo stuff. So I'm always learning new things there too.
Awesome. So excited to have you here today and have this conversation with you, Cassandra. So today's topic, we are going to talk all about conscious relationships. And I've learned so much from you on lots of different things. And we've had really great conversations on motherhood and spirituality and all of the different things. So super excited to have this conversation today. So let's dive right in to the questions with what does it mean to have a conscious relationship?
Yeah, so a conscious relationship is a relationship of 2 or more, no judgment, right? Folks that are committed to their own personal development, self-awareness, and growth, first and foremost. 2 people that know that it's only from doing your own work and your own healing and that can look different for everybody.
Mm.
And being full in yourself, that you can really bring fullness to a relationship.
I love that. I love that. So pretty much it's like being obviously conscious, but like present in your relationship and realizing it's not just about the other person who needs to do things, right? But we ourselves have to also work on ourselves and make sure we're giving ourselves what we need first before we expect that from somebody else.
Absolutely. And it's also recognizing that the relationship itself is its own conscious kind of entity, right? That both folks in the relationship are nurturing, that they're tending to, that they're putting time and effort and energy into. I often use the analogy of two people running a business. And if one person is showing up every day and putting in the 8 hours and serving customers and working hard, and the other person drops in once or twice a month and then tries to boss them around or tell them how they should, display things differently or order different items and make changes, it's not going to work very well. We need both folks willing to show up every day and put in the work and do the work to make that business or that relationship successful.
Yeah. Super important that it's not just one person being committed to it. It's everyone involved in that relationship needs to be committed to it. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So what type of work do you provide as a conscious relationship coach then? Knowing that about what a conscious relationship is, how do you fit into that with helping to coach people through it?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one work. I also run some group programs, and then I also have a monthly membership program. And I do a lot of education first and foremost, because we are not taught how to have a healthy relationship. If I had like one wish, it would be to teach about healthy relationships, communication skills, attachment theory, like in that freshman health class, right, that we all have to take in high school. So folks could have an understanding of what is a healthy relationships, what are red flags, how do I get my needs met in relationship and speak up, and how do I handle conflict and then repair after that conflict, right? We don't get taught these things. So first and foremost, it's a lot of education. I also provide, that connection and that safe space that we often have to be in to change. So I'm a therapist by trade, I'm trauma informed, and I'm always bringing in education about neuroscience, how our brain works and how we make change. And what we know is that we have to feel safe and connected to let go of maybe some of those old survival patterns or survival adaptations. If you grew up in a home where you had to be very defensive, or if you grew up in a home where it wasn't safe to show emotions, so you learned to holding your emotions to stay safe, you're going to have a hard time finding a healthy, intimate relationship, continuing those same patterns. So we identify a lot of those old survival patterns and start on a plan or on a program through somatic interventions, through some talk therapy or coaching, but also taking action. Because what we also know is to rewire the brain and the nervous system, we have to take small but consistent, targeted, strategic steps to change how we automatically react or respond. So I guide folks through that process.
I love that. I really do. And I think that education piece, like you said, first and foremost, it's about education. I know for me, I grew up in an evangelical Christian household, and that's, all of our family friends and everything else, like they were all very much in that culture as well. So, I've had to, as I've pulled away from that, that lifestyle, that culture, and those beliefs, I've had to kind of rewire what does that, for me, what type of relationship do I want to have with my husband?
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of unlearning certain things.
Yeah.
Husband as head of the household and, be quiet and submissive and all of these different things, which if those are your beliefs, they might be right for you. They're not right for me.
Yeah.
So I've had to relearn a lot of those different things, and that education piece, learning to relearning how to communicate my needs, my wants, my desires, and knowing that those things are okay. So like I said, I've learned so much from you, just the things that you share, because it's like these light bulbs go off, like, oh my God, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. Yes, I'm going to start incorporating that in, or wow, I never thought of it that way before. So yeah.
And that's why having that trauma-informed lens is so essential, because there is a reason why we do the things we do, even if they're things that we wish we didn't do, or we feel frustrated, or that we can't change in ourselves. Again, these are, ways that we adapted or survived at some point. So like you said, it's like, oh, okay, cool. I don't have to feel so ashamed, or I don't have to feel so guilty, or like I'm failing because I can't find a relationship, or I'm failing because I'm struggling in my marriage. Like, there's a reason why, and that you make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say that there are certain struggles that clients come to you with, like typical type of things? I guess you could say, obviously each relationship is going to be different, but are there certain things that people come to you with that seem to be like a common theme?
Yeah, so it's usually one of two things. It's, folks that are single, that maybe have been single for a really long time and can't find a relationship, or they're single kind of just out of another failed relationship with somebody that they didn't realize was toxic or emotionally unavailable, and they're wanting to break that cycle. Or again, somebody that's in a long-term relationship or marriage that's unhappy and wondering if they should stay or go. And the first thing I always work on with, regardless of what situation that they're in, is to start really working on stress management and nervous system regulation, doing that inner work first. Because if we are constantly living in that fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, shutdown mode, we're not going to be able to learn or to make change or to respond differently. So regardless, it's like, okay, let's kind of take a look at what's going on inside, what is stressing you out in your life, where you maybe need to set up some boundaries or cut back on work a little bit, so we can even really get into the work.
Yeah. I know, even just within my own, the fight, flight, or freeze, stress management, that's so true, even just for myself, with, what's going on in your own life that you need to manage a little bit better so that you can have that communication, or, focus on having these relationships with other people.
Yeah, and maybe it's not something that you can manage, and you just got to let it go, or it's not something you can control and that you have to, work on accepting, right? But it's really getting that clarity.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So that kind of leads into my next question with, and you kind of already touched on it, but can anybody benefit from this? Do you need to be in a relationship with somebody, or can somebody who's single benefit from the work that you do?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. It's a great question. There's benefits to being in either situation, because if you're single doing this kind of work, you maybe have like the time and the energy just to really focus on you, and you can reflect back on past experiences and patterns that you've observed, and start to learn new skills. Maybe you start practicing communication skills, conscious communication skills with your family or your friends, right? Or if you're dating, practicing these skills. And if you're in a relationship, you're kind of already like in it, and it's actually applying it and now in real time, right? And being able to kind of get that feedback right away, and because you're in the relationship in real time. And the truth is, like, relationships are there to trigger us. They are there to, kind of trigger our childhood wounds. We there's a saying that we're hurt in relationships and we heal in relationships. So when we really understand what are my wounds, what are those old survival patterns, what are those old stories, and start to change it, then even when I'm in a relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship or with a parent, and I am triggered, how can I use that now as an opportunity to respond differently, or to tend to my inner child in that moment, or to set a boundary, to speak up for myself, to take up space, right? And that is where the real healing comes, again, is through the action. And a lot of folks come to me with, I've read all the Instagram posts, I've read all these self-help books, like I know what I'm supposed to do, but in the moment I collapse and I people please. In the moment I yell. In the moment I, right, fill in the blank. And that again, this shows that just having head knowledge isn't all of it. We need to have that embodied experience and taking those actions.
Yes. I'm thinking even just to a situation I had yesterday. So I'm in my luteal phase, which is, PMS time. I'm extra. How did I word it? Oh, I was really ragey yesterday, is how I put it. Getting triggered by like all of these little things. When that happens, I get turned into like victimizing myself. I get very bitter. I get very raging. I get very, whatever. So I then tend to blame my husband for not being what I need him to be. But it's so true. Like, I know all of that, right? But then I've slowly begun, I say slowly because it still happens from time to time, but bring in that embodiment piece of slowing way the F down. So I'm not reactive, but I'm like just able to process everything and going, okay, inner child, like, let's chat. What do you need right now? Like, what is not happening? What are you not giving yourself that you're expecting your partner to give to you? So I love that you provide a safe space for folks to be able to do this work, because in the past, I would have gone on for like days on that rampage. Whereas now it's like, not as long as that.
And because we're human. And I always tell my clients, like, the goal isn't that you're perfectly regulated or perfectly calm or perfectly anything 100% of the time. Like, you're human. It's just about recognizing it and course correcting and bringing yourself back faster and faster as time goes on, right? Yeah, beautiful. I love that process of the first just pausing. Sometimes I tell my clients, like, you're at the point right now where you just need to take an adult timeout when you start getting to this place, and say, I need to go in the other room. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Or I'm going to take a walk. I'll be back in 20 minutes. It's important that if we do that, we also maintain safety and say where we're going and how long we're going to be gone for, right? But if we need to kind of put ourselves on a timeout, so then we can regulate. And once you kind of shifted your internal state into that space of more groundedness, then you were able to, this is like time for my inner child. My inner child needs some tending to here. My responses may be bigger than what the situation is really calling for. That's a big sign that we're in a trigger. And you were able to do some reparenting there. That's beautiful.
I love it. So what are some of the benefits of conscious relationship coaching that you found? Are there short-term, long-term? What kind of benefits have you seen?
So short term, I see folks pretty quickly decrease their stress and anxiety levels. Sometimes I'll have folks come to work with me that experience overwhelm almost to the um, extreme of having like panic attacks or shutting down. And pretty quickly, we're able to figure out what tools that they need to help them start to not have to go like so far down. I always say it's like a snowball. Like stress starts as a little snowball at the top of the hill, and then over the course of the day or the week, it gets bigger and bigger, and before you know it, it's an avalanche. And by then, you're just doing damage control. By then, you're just apologizing to everybody in the house because you've lost your shit, you know?
Yep.
So learning how to internally monitor in a way that's not obsessively like over checking in with ourselves, right? Because with any tool and coping skill, we can become neurotic about it. So, but internally self-monitor, cultivating mindfulness, or just practices to help us check in with ourselves more and be able to kind of stop that snowball before it gets too big and then it's rolling over us. And that shifts over the course of just a couple months, all of our relationships. I always tell folks we cannot change our partners. And if they are over there telling their partner, you need to do this, or you have to meditate because I'm meditating now, or it's like, stop. We're focusing on us again, back to like focusing on what we can control. But just by shifting our internal state where we're not so reactive anymore, or maybe as often, right? And shifting how we're showing up, it impacts all of the relationships in our lives. So I tell folks, the good news and the bad news is that you only have control over 50% of your relationship. And for folks that are more like over functioners and they're doing 90% trying to keep the relationship going, and they're afraid if they back off, like the relationship will stop. That's hard. But we really have to just come back and make sure we're taking care of our 50%. Some people are so busy focusing on others that they're not even taking care of their own 50%, which includes speaking up for your wants and needs and desires, setting boundaries, doing self-care, right? That's part of taking care of your half of the relationship. So a person cannot change this internal state and how they're communicating and engaging though, without it really having a significant impact on a relationship. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it does start to change dynamics in a household or with a family, or the kind of people that they find themselves meeting and dating and chatting with on the internet within a few months. Yeah.
That's great. And that's so good too, that you can see those benefits so quickly, and it, it really, I know for myself, sometimes all I need is that hour, not even hour, like just that time for myself, that self-care time to make a difference, because sometimes I just need a little bit of quiet, and that's okay. It makes all the difference. And like you said, it impacts not just a romantic relationship, but also maybe like with your children or your siblings or your parents. Nurturing yourself, taking that time impacts everything.
Yes. And I'm not an expert in human design or astrology at all, but I do look at that with my clients that I work with, because things like what you need for your emotional self-care, your moon sign tells you a lot about that, how your energy ebbs and flows throughout the day, or how your capacity, right? Human design talks a lot about that. Even what I just learned recently, what phase of the moon you're born in, also tells you about how much or how little time you need to yourself. And I'm such an extrovert, like I love people, and I, being an extrovert means you get energy from being around people, right? And I thought, well, because I love that. But I'm actually realizing as a Capricorn moon and being born under a waxing gibbous moon phase, I actually really need my time alone, which is something that I've really been cultivating in the last, I would say 3-4 years. But I never thought that, I thought that was selfish, right, growing up. And so I do want to bring that into that. Any kind of work that you're doing that isn't bringing in the lens of the patriarchy, of white supremacy, of the hustle and grind, this kind of like out of control capitalistic culture that just values busyness, and your value is based on how much money you make, or how much you can produce. Like all of that, if that's not also a lens that you are looking at yourself through, it's really important too, because maybe you're just so busy trying to be successful in the eyes of who knows, right? Society, your parents, you're running yourself into the ground and too busy to date, or neglecting your relationship. And it's not just your own individual trauma. It's not just your own stuff you need to heal and work through too. It's a lot of these broader systems and programming that we are all kind of under the guise of in this colonial system. So I just wanted to name that too. That's really important to understand how that's impacting your life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you and I have chatted about that a bit too. We're totally here for dismantling all of that shit. No more. We are reclaiming rest and, all of the things. Yes, I'm really glad that you brought that into the conversation as well. Yeah, beautiful. And I love too that you mentioned the human design piece, that's something that you go over with them. I've noticed that I'm a projector. So for me, with reparenting myself, I've brought that piece in too. Because not just I look at it, how do I parent each of my kids, which are different, except my middle, she's a projector as well, but everybody else is different. How do I individually parent them, but how do I reparent myself, giving myself what I need in that way? So I love that you talk about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a generator, so I can work as long as I'm doing work I love. I can work. Capricorn moon, Capricorn rising, I can work. And recognizing that and kind of giving myself permission just to work, especially, the days that my kids are at their dad's house, me and my husband have our date night time, but just to do that, that's huge. And my husband's a projector. And I have to admit, when we first got together and I didn't know about human design, I was a little judgy about his need for naps. And like, I don't understand, like, is he lazy? Like, what's his deal? Like, he just doesn't care. Like, he's not trying. Like, what, And then learning he's a projector, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, he really, the man needs his naps. Yeah. So that helps a lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's go ahead and close out this beautiful conversation. I have one last question for you. If you could give some advice to someone listening in right now who might be struggling in their relationships, or maybe they're single and wanting to be in a relationship, what would that be?
My advice would be, so I guess like I'll give a strategy tip and then kind of an internal tip. And I've already touched on these, but a strategy tip is to really look at your life right now, like take an assessment of kind of your current relationships, your current stressors, your current obligations, and looking at where do you need to pull back or reclaim some of your time and energy and just mental space, so you could really get a clear picture on what's happening. I always tell folks, that in the beginning, it's like we're Dorothy at the beginning of Wizard of Oz, and you're just like in the tornado and there's like a cow flying by and just, it's like a mess. And if we can clear some of that stuff out, working on kind of the internal tip is really cultivating like a mindfulness practice, or, like you said, Jordan, taking time to slow down, creating more time for rest, and doing things that help us to feel cared for and nurtured and soothed. That will really help you kind of calm down the tornado, get everything back on the ground so you could really take a lay of the land and see what's what. So you can see, I call it your trauma map. And some people come to work with me and they already have theirs. They're like, yep, I have daddy issues over here. And like my mom, this issues over here. And my first boyfriend treated me like this way. And like, they kind of get it, but then they're not sure how to navigate it. Right. And that's where I come in. So, if it feels like you're overwhelmed or you're stuck or you're not sure, like slowing down. So in giving yourself permission to take the time to journal, to reflect, to walk or do yoga, or like whatever it is that helps you to feel more grounded. Otherwise, you're going to be like me in toxic relationships for 20 years, including my first marriage, and like wondering, where the time went.
Yeah. The answer is already within us, right? Like we just have to slow down to allow it to come through. So good. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for sharing with us about conscious relationship coaching and all of that. I'm so thankful for your time and this conversation. How can listeners connect with you, work with you, share all of the things?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram every day at Cassandra_Solano. I am constantly teaching and sharing tips on there. You can go to my link in the bio there for all my current offerings. I have a bunch of freebies, like free workbooks on attachment styles, which if relationships is something that you're struggling with and you don't know about attachment styles, check that out either through my freebie and the link in my Instagram bio, or Jordan, maybe I'll send you the link too for that for your listeners. Or, Google search, like that is like the last huge piece. Like if you're looking at the astrology and like all this other stuff, but you're not looking at the attachment styles, you're missing a huge piece. I have a freebie on trusting yourself after trauma. A lot of people struggle after a dysfunctional childhood or relationship with feeling like they can trust themselves. So there's a free workbook on there as well. Or you can always just head to my website at CassandraSolano.com.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll make sure all of that information is in the show notes for listeners. And yes, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Another massive thank you to Cassandra for this important conversation on conscious relationships. Make sure to check out the corresponding blog post on the website, www.jordanlanco.com/blog, and connect with us on our Instagram account at The Jordan Lang Podcast to continue the conversation. If you're finding value in these conversations, please rate and review on iTunes, as well as download, subscribe, and follow on whichever platform you choose to listen. Thank you for your love and support of the Jordan Lang Podcast. Sending you all lots of love.